boys and girls, and welcome back to my classroom here at Sequoyah Elementary. I hope that you're all having a great week and that you've been out enjoying the beautiful weather we've been having. Today, we are going to talk about some social studies and science together. The last couple weeks, I've been talking to you about people of the past. And today, we're going to talk about the past, but not necessarily about certain people, but about a certain landmark that we have here in America. So, first of all, I want to talk to you about what a landmark is. So a landmark is an object or feature of a landscape or town that's easily seen and recognized from a distance, especially one that enables someone to establish their location. So something that you see and you instantly go, oh, that's in such and such place, or that's this certain landmark. You know it just from seeing it. So for example, maybe you see the president of Mount Rushmore. And you think, oh, wow, I know right where that is. That's in South Dakota because that's where Mount Rushmore is. Or maybe you see a picture of the White House and you associate that with the president and Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Or maybe even locally, you see the blue whale when you're out driving and you know that you're on Route 66 and you're in the Catoosa area. Okay, those are all landmarks. So today we're going to talk about a special landmark that I think a lot of you are going to recognize, but maybe you're going to learn something new about it. Something else we're going to talk about is symbolism. Symbolism is the practice or art of using an object, like a landmark, or a word to represent an abstract idea. So for example, maybe a heart. If you see a heart, what do you associate a heart with? That usually symbolizes what? Maybe love, or Valentine's Day, or affection, that you really like something, you put a heart. Okay? Another symbol that we see a lot is the American flag. And that can symbolize lots of things, like the United States, or freedom, or sometimes the 4th of July, or Memorial Day, patriotism. All those things are symbolic. And so today we're going to talk about a national symbol that's also a landmark in our country. Another word that you're going to see today or hear today is immigrant. And an immigrant is a person that comes to live permanently in a foreign country. So like you all live in the United States, but if you decided to move away and you wanted to live in another country like Japan, or maybe you want to live in Germany, you would become an immigrant by moving to another country, even though because that's not the one where you were born. And then the last word I want to talk to you about before we begin our book is liberty. And liberty is the state or condition of people who are able to act and speak freely. So thinking of freedom. And we have liberty in the United States because we can have freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and all those freedoms that we enjoy are because of liberty. All right. So this morning, the book I'm going to be reading you is going to take place in 2 different cities. The first one is Paris, and Paris is located in Europe. Okay, it's over in France. And then we're also going to be talking about New York City, which is in the state of New York, which is located in the United States. And they're separated by a body of water, which is the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so does anybody have any guesses what landmark we might be talking about today? If you had guessed the Statue of Liberty, you would be correct. So I'm going to be sharing a book with you today called Her Right Foot. And this book is by Dave Eggers, and the art in it is very unique. I want you to watch the art in it today. It's really neat. Just a few colors, but the way he does his artwork makes it look almost 3-dimensional. And it's by Sean Harris. I'm actually going to take the little book jacket off because it makes it kind of hard to hold. All right. So let's see if you learned something new about the Statue of Liberty today. You have likely heard of a place called France. If you've heard France, you may have heard of the French. They are the people who live in France. You may also have heard of something called the Statue of Liberty. Have any of you ever been to the Statue of Liberty? I've been close. I haven't been inside the Statue of Liberty, but I've been in the water around the Statue of Liberty. It's very cool to see. You can see it from a long way away. Did you know that the Statue of Liberty comes from France? This is true. This is a factual book. So if this is a factual book, does that mean it's fiction or nonfiction? It would be nonfiction, because that means that this is a book full of facts. One day, a Frenchman named Edouard de Labaleye had an idea. The idea was to celebrate the 100 years the United States of America had been around by giving them a giant sculpture. So he convinced another Frenchman, a Frenchman with an Italian last name, to design the sculpture. This artist's name was Frederick Augusta Bartholdi. Bartholdi designed the statue. He first made very small models of the sculpture, then larger ones, and finally one that is the one we know, which stands 305 feet above the water. This final, full-size version was covered with a thin copper skin. The skin is about as thick as 2 pennies. That's not very thick. I have a couple of pennies to show you. 2 pennies is only this thick. That's not very thick. It's a very thin layer on the outside that's covered in copper. Here is a rendering of Bartholdi and his team. He had a team. He did not work alone. He did not like working alone, constructing the statue's hand. Notice the hand is bigger than the men. Thus, they made the statue in many parts. These parts were assembled in New York City. No, wait. First, they were assembled in Paris. Did you know this? Ask your friends and even your teachers if they knew before the Statue of Liberty was assembled in New York, she was first constructed in Paris. Your friends and teachers will be astounded. They will be impressed. They might think you are fibbing, but you are not fibbing. This really happened. The Statue of Liberty stood there high above Paris for almost a year in 1884. After they got it all assembled in Paris, they took it apart. But we just put it together, the workers said. That is absurd, they said. They said all of this in French, the language of the French, a people who appreciate the absurd. So you can see him sleeping on the crown of the statue. In 1885, after they took it apart, they put the parts in 214 crates and put these crates on a boat. The boat was called the Surrey and made its way to a city called New York, which is in a state also called New York. Hundreds of workers, perhaps 214 of them, took the pieces out of the 214 boxes, then began to rivet the pieces together. Assembling the statue took 17 months, and it all happened on what was then called Bedloe's Island. Bartholdi liked to see the sculpture rise above the harbor. Sometimes he watched the construction from the water. Sometimes he watched it from the land. Usually he was wearing a sturdy black hat, for he, like most European men of the time, favored sturdy black hats. Okay, I'm going to show you real quick another map that I have. And this one shows New York. New York is kind of like a peninsula down in the Hudson Bay here. And you can see this is a lot of landmarks that we have today in New York. Those wouldn't have been around in the 1880s. But you can see things like Central Park and the Chrysler Building and Empire State Building and Times Square and Madison Square Garden. Lots of things that you might recognize. But the Statue of Liberty is way out here. It's on its own little island right outside of New York City. And that's where they constructed it. There was nothing there. You may have noticed by now the pictures of the Statue of Liberty in this book have her colored brown. You may have thought the illustrator of this book was not so good at his job because we all know the Statue of Liberty to be a certain greenish blue. But the Statue of Liberty was made of copper, and copper starts out brown. Then very slowly, when left outside for long periods of time, copper will eventually oxidize. And when it does, it turns this blue-green color. At the end today, I'll kind of show you a picture of what the Statue of Liberty would look like if she had not turned this blue-green color, if she was still copper. So the Statue of Liberty that everyone in New York saw being constructed was actually brown. The Statue of Liberty, in fact, was brown for about 35 years. The statue turned green around 1920 and has been this color ever since. Perhaps you already knew this. And you may have known that the book the statue is carrying, the one in her left hand, features the date July 4th, 1776, on which the Declaration of Independence was signed. And you may know that the 7 spikes on her crown represent the 7 seas on Earth and the 7 continents and the sun's rays, too. And you probably know that the torch she carries is a symbol of enlightenment, lighting the path to liberty and freedom. And I thought this was very interesting. I didn't know this, but you might have. And you might have known that at one point, Thomas Edison, inventor of the light bulb and the record player, remember we talked about record players last week, he once proposed to have a giant record player put inside the Statue of Liberty. He did. He wanted the statue to be able to speak. In the end, though, this idea was considered a bit strange and was not pursued. Can you imagine if there was a record player inside? That'd have to be a really big record player. And did you know that the interior of the statue was designed by another Frenchman by the name of Eiffel? That's right, the same Eiffel who, a few years later, would design the Eiffel Tower. So you can see the Eiffel Tower here, and then they kind of drew a little rendering of the Statue of Liberty and how the inside of her body is very similar in structure to the Eiffel Tower. And did you know that while the statue was first being constructed in Paris, a bunch of Parisians, mostly writers, they like to eat, actually dined in the area just below the statue's knee? This is true. While the statue was rising, Bartholdi set up a lunch 4 stories up to impress and enthrall these French writers, who, being difficult to impress and enthrall, were at least mildly amused. Okay, I'm going to stop there for just a minute. We're going to return to the book after a second, but first I want to pause and talk about primary sources. So the last couple weeks I've had objects with me to show you as primary sources. But today, since we're talking about the 1880s, I didn't have anything around my house from the 1880s. So I had to get creative and look online and try to find some primary sources. So today, the things I'm going to be showing you are primary source documents that were published in magazines and newspapers. So these are going to be like drawings or sketches, not a photograph. So the first one, I want you to think about, what do the following images teach us about how the Statue of Liberty was constructed? So what can you learn from the primary source images? Now, if we were in the classroom, I would have printed these out nice and big and hung them around the room and let you go around and look at them with magnifying glasses and really study them up close. And you could do that later. I could post these on the Facebook group, and you can look at them closely, maybe zoom in and look at them more carefully. But today I'm just going to show you briefly what they look like. So here are some workmen constructing the Statue of Liberty. So it might be kind of hard for you to see, but there's some men here, and they're working on bits and pieces of the statue. And there's scraps laying around, and there's a huge arm and a hand holding the tablet here that they're putting together. And they're inside an old warehouse-looking building where they must have started constructing it. So I thought that was really interesting to see them putting all those pieces. Remember, there was 214 crates of pieces they had to put together like a puzzle. Then here they are assembling the Statue of Liberty, and they've got like some scaffolding around, and all they have done is like the waist down of her, and over here is the torch and her head, and then there's people way down here to kind of show you how tiny they are compared to her. And you can see them up here working as well. There's a person right there. And then here they are. They've got her mostly put together, and they've got some scaffolding up here where they're putting together her head and the torch. And you can see just little bitty dots here that are the people working on her, trying to keep it all together. And you can see the boats around in the harbor surrounding her. So pretty interesting to see them constructing all of that on Bedloe's Island. And then here's another one where they've got her mostly put together, I think this one looks like it was set when they were maybe putting her together in Paris because the buildings around her, she doesn't look to be on an island. But it kind of shows you this is a rendering of Bartholdi. That's what he looked like. And here's someone compared to her back foot. And so it just kind of shows you the progress that they went through to put her together. It's a lot of pieces. And then that's what she looks like today if you were to go visit her in New York. And I was going to show you real quick. There's what she would have looked like if she were still copper. Okay, what she looked like for about 30 years before it oxidized and turned that greenish blue color. So if she were still copper today, if they were to go and clean her and shine her up, that's what she would look like. Wouldn't that look a lot different? All right, so I'm going to go back to reading to you the rest of our book. We're almost done, but I wanted to show you those primary source images first. Okay, but there is one thing you might not know, and this is the central point to this book. A point the author apologizes for taking so long to get to. The point is that even if you have seen a picture of the Statue of Liberty, or many pictures of the Statue of Liberty, or even hundreds of pictures of the Statue of Liberty, you probably have not seen pictures of her feet. And even if you have seen pictures of her feet, you probably have not seen pictures of the back of her feet, in particular, her right foot. Okay, even if we look at the image up here, you can't see the back of her feet. You just see the front of her. What do you notice when you see this picture? So here's her foot, and they're kind of standing looking at it. What do you notice about it? See something different? And here's a zoomed in image of her foot. Notice that it's sticking up a little bit. What might that imply? That's right. She is going somewhere. She is on the move. I even have an image up here I can put up so it's a little bigger for you. There's her right foot. See how it's sticking up like she is moving or going somewhere. Let's pause here and collect ourselves and think about this. Let's discuss this. Let's think about and discuss the fact that this is the largest sculpture in all the land and the most iconic symbol of the United States of America. Let's talk about the fact that this statue has welcomed millions of visitors and immigrants to the USA. People talk about her unusual headwear. They talk about her gown, which seems a very heavy kind of garment and would likely result in serious lower back issues. They talk about her beautiful torch and the severe look on her face. But no one talks about the fact that she is walking. This 150-foot woman is on the go. Every time we see the Statue of Liberty in pictures, or any time we imagine the Statue of Liberty, we see her standing still, very still, like, well, a statue. And here's a lot of the type of things that you could buy if you visit New York City. I had one of these as a kid. You could buy the glasses and all the little statues and mugs and the snow globe and all those kind of things. But they just show her standing still. But she is moving. She weighs 450,000 pounds. Do you know what size shoe she would wear? Size 879 shoe. And she is moving. How can we all have missed this? Or even if we saw this and noticed this, how is it that we have seen and noticed a 450,000-pound human on her way somewhere and said, just another 150-foot woman walking off a 150-foot pedestal? And most important, where is she going? Is she going to Soho to get a panini? Is she going to the West Village to look for vintage Nico records? No. She's facing southwest, so she's facing New Jersey. Could she be going to Trenton? No, wait. She's facing southeast, so she is not going to New Jersey, but she is going somewhere. But where? Why is she moving? There are certain things we know. We know that around her feet are chains. They are broken chains, implying that she has freed herself from bondage. We know that Bartholdi wanted us to know this. He wanted us to see the chains. People have talked about the chains. But few talk about the foot that is so obviously in mid-stride, about the fact that her entire right leg is in mid-stride. What does this mean? What does this mean that we often forget about this right foot, this right leg? Here's an idea. Here is a theory. Here is a reminder. If the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of freedom, if the Statue of Liberty has welcomed millions of immigrants to the United States, then how can she stand still? Liberty and freedom from oppression are not things you get or grant by standing around like some kind of statue. No, these are things that require action, courage, and unwillingness to rest. The Statue of Liberty was not built to welcome just 1,886 immigrants from Italy on one certain Sunday in, say, 1886. No, she was built to welcome 3,000 immigrants from Poland the next day. The next day, 5,000 Norwegians. After that, 10,000 Glaswegians. Then Cambodians, then Estonians, Somalis, Nepalis, Syrians, Liberians. It never ends. It cannot end. After all, the Statue of Liberty is an immigrant too. What does that mean? Didn't she come from another country too? And that is why she's moving. That is why she is striding. In welcoming the poor, the tired, the struggling to breathe free. She is not content to wait. She must meet them in the sea. And there she is. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about some science you could do with this. Before I get to that, I want you to really be thinking about where could she be going. You could make up a story about that, or maybe you really think about how she got where she is and what she symbolizes. And I would love for you to share that with me on our little Facebook group. And you could tell me, what do you think she symbolizes, or why was she created? And you can post that on our Facebook group. All right, so we're going to do a quick science experiment. This is one that you can do at home with just some basic supplies. All you need are some pennies, some kind of small plate or dish, some paper towels, and some vinegar, the stinky stuff. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to turn a penny to look like the Statue of Liberty. So I'm going to tell you that pennies dated 1982 or before are 95% copper. So they are going to give you a better result. If they're newer pennies, they are only like a little thin copper coating, so they don't oxidize quite as well. They don't turn out as neat. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a paper towel and just fold it over and place it on your plate or dish. And you're going to get some vinegar, and you're going to get some pennies. Okay, it doesn't matter how many. Search around your house and find some pennies. Like I said, before 1982 is best. And just lay them out on the plate like that. And then you're just going to get some vinegar, and you're going to pour it on your napkin to kind of soak it. And then you're just going to let those pennies sit. Now, in an hour or so, you might see a little bit of change, something like this. But if you let them stay for, say, a day or two, and you have to flip them over every once in a while, and you might have to re-wet your paper towel with some more vinegar every once in a while too. But if you do that, I set these up on Tuesday, and I'm going to show you a few of my pennies from Tuesday that we did. Do you notice what color they are? They have turned that bluish green, just like the Statue of Liberty. And I have a bunch that turned bluish green. They even turned my paper towel a bluish green just from being in the vinegar. So I thought that was really fascinating, kind of the before and after of those pennies, how much they changed just in a couple days. So that's the same way. That's a chemical reaction that's happening with the pennies, just like what happened to the Statue of Liberty. So I hope that you try that. I would love to see some pictures or videos of the before and after of your pennies. It's a great experiment to do at home, just with some basic supplies you probably have around the house. Okay, a couple more things. Our Facebook group is Mrs. Owens RSU Showcase. That's where I'd love to hear your input on what you think the Statue of Liberty is doing, where she's going, what she symbolizes for our country. And I would love to see your penny experiments too. I have one more thing before I leave you today. If you want to, I would love to pack all of you up and take you to New York so we could tour the Statue of Liberty. You actually can go in her these days, not right now because of the pandemic, but normally you can go inside the Statue of Liberty and you can, I looked it up just now, there's a museum in the pedestal, and then to climb to the top of her crown is 377 steps. That's 20 stories high that you have to climb to get to the top, and you can look out. Since I can't take you all there, the first thing you